The gunmetal Mercedes pulled into the circular driveway 3 hours earlier than expected. Min-Jun Kim killed the engine and sat in the December darkness, watching snowflakes drift past the ornate windows of his Seoul mansion. Something felt wrong. The house was too bright, too alive for 9 p.m. on a Wednesday when his wife claimed she'd be attending a charity gala until midnight. He stepped out, his black cashmere coat catching the wind, and that's when he heard it through the partially open window of his own bedroom. His wife's laughter. Breathless. Intimate. And a man's voice he recognized all too well. Min-Jun's jaw clenched. His hand instinctively moved toward the gun at his hip, but before he could take another step, a soft hand touched his arm from the shadows near the servants' entrance. "Be quiet," a voice whispered urgently. It was Petra, the housemaid his wife had hired 6 months ago. The young black woman's eyes were wide with fear, but also something else. Determination. She pulled him back into the darkness, her finger pressed to her lips, and in that moment, Min-Jun Kim, the most feared Mafia boss in Seoul, did something he rarely did. He listened. What he was about to discover would burn his entire world to ashes, but from those ashes, something unexpected would rise. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Afro-Korean channel, where your favorite love stories come alive with all the passion, drama, and emotion you crave. Before we dive into today's explosive tale, I want to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. May this season bring you love, joy, and all the blessings you deserve. Now, settle in because tonight's story is going to take you on a ride you won't forget. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end for this one. Petra's hand trembled as she held Min-Jun's arm, guiding him away from the front entrance and toward the side garden where the shadows were thicker. The snow crunched softly beneath their feet, each step measured, calculated. She could feel the tension radiating from his body, the barely contained rage of a man who just had his world tilted on its axis. "Talk," Min-Jun commanded, his voice low and deadly. Even in a whisper, it carried the weight of authority. "And this better be good, or you're fired for touching me." Petra swallowed hard. She'd rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times over the past 2 weeks, but now that it was here, the words stuck in her throat. She looked up at him, this man whose reputation preceded him like thunder before a storm. Min-Jun Kim. 34 years old. Ruthless. Brilliant. Deadly. And, she'd discovered over 6 months of working in his home, desperately lonely. "Your wife," she began, her Nigerian accent thick with emotion. "She's not just cheating on you, sir. She's planning to kill you." The words hung in the frozen air between them like a death sentence. Min-Jun's expression didn't change, but Petra saw his pupils dilate, saw the way his breathing shifted, became more controlled. "Explain. Everything. Now." So she did. 2 weeks ago, Petra had been cleaning the upstairs study, the one Mrs. Kim, Hannah, thought was locked. But Petra had learned early in her employment that in a house this big, there were always spare keys, always ways to access the forgotten corners. She'd been dusting the bookshelf when she heard voices in the adjoining room. Hannah's bedroom. The one she no longer shared with her husband. The walls in old mansions were thick, but the heating vents carried sound like whispered secrets. And what Petra heard made her blood run cold. 3 more weeks, Hannah had said, her voice sharp and calculating. The insurance policy updates on January 1st. Double indemnity. $50 million, Taeyang. 50 million, and we can finally be together without hiding. The man's response was eager, hungry. "And you're sure the plan will work? Your husband isn't stupid, Hannah. He's survived assassination attempts from rival gangs. What makes you think?" "Because he trusts me," Hannah interrupted, and Petra could hear the smile in her voice. "He doesn't love me, hasn't touched me in over a year, but he trusts me. And that's his weakness. On Christmas Eve, during the annual family gathering, I'll put the antifreeze in his whiskey. Just enough. It'll look like a heart attack. The family doctor is already paid off. And you, my darling, will be on a plane to Japan with a perfect alibi. Petra's hands had frozen on the dust cloth as she listened, her heart hammering so hard she thought they might hear it through the walls. And the maid? Taeyang had asked. The black girl. She's always around, always watching. What if? Petra? Hannah had laughed, cold and dismissive. She's nobody. An immigrant desperate for work. Even if she suspected something, who would believe her over me? Over us? She'll be deported back to Lagos before she could finish making an accusation. Now, standing in the snow-covered garden, Petra watched Min-jun process this information. She'd expected rage, expected him to storm into the house with guns blazing. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Young-woo. I need you at my location. Bring the team. And bring recording equipment. He paused. Because I'm about to catch a snake, and I want evidence before I cut off its head. He ended the call and looked at Petra properly for the first time. Really looked at her. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with rich dark skin that caught the moonlight and eyes that held more courage than most of his trained soldiers. She wore the simple black and white uniform of house staff, but she stood before him without cowering, even though she had every reason to be terrified. Why didn't you come to me sooner? He asked. Petra met his gaze steadily. Because I needed proof, sir. And because I needed to know if you were worth saving. The audacity of the statement would have gotten anyone else killed. Instead, Min-jun felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Respect. And something else he couldn't quite name. And, he asked. Am I? I watched you for 2 weeks, Petra said quietly. I saw how you donate to the children's hospital under fake names. How you paid for your driver's daughter's wedding when he was too proud to ask. How you visit your mother's grave every Sunday, even when you're exhausted. So yes, sir. I think you're worth saving. Before Min-jun could respond, headlights swept across the garden. Young-woo had arrived, along with 3 other men from Min-jun's inner circle. They moved like shadows, professional and silent, gathering around their boss in the darkness. What's the play? Young-woo asked, his eyes cutting to Petra with curiosity and suspicion. We're going to give my dear wife exactly what she wants, Min-jun said, a smile playing at his lips that didn't reach his eyes. We're going to let her think her plan is working. But first, I need to see it for myself. I need to see the man she chose over me. He turned back to the house, and this time when he moved, it was with purpose. Petra followed, her heart racing. The other men flanked them, professionals at making themselves invisible. They entered through the servants' entrance, moving through the kitchen and up the back staircase that the staff used. Petra led the way, knowing every creaking board, every squeaky hinge. They reached the 2nd floor, and she guided them to a door adjacent to the master bedroom. It was a storage closet, rarely used, but it had a connecting door that had been locked from the bedroom side. Min-jun tested the handle. Locked, as expected. He pulled out a small tool kit from his coat, another reminder that before he was a boss, he'd been a soldier in the streets, learning every skill necessary for survival. The lock clicked open in seconds. The closet was dark and cramped with all 5 of them inside, but through the narrow gap in the connecting door, they had a perfect view of the bedroom. And there, in the bed Min-jun had bought for his wife as an anniversary present, was Hannah. And straddling her, his face buried in her neck, was Park Taeyang. Min-jun's cousin. His blood. The man he'd trusted as his second-in-command for 8 years. The betrayal hit harder than any bullet ever had. Petra watched Min-jun's face in the darkness and saw something break behind his eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. Just a brief contact, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this moment. His fingers twitched, then briefly, so briefly she might have imagined it, they squeezed hers in acknowledgement. Young-woo was already recording with a small, professional camera, capturing every angle, every damning moment. The audio picked up everything. Hannah's breathless confessions of love to Taeyang. Taeyang's promises of the life they'd build once Min-jun was dead and buried. The specific details of their plan, repeated now in the hazy afterglow of their passion. Christmas Eve, Hannah murmured, trailing her fingers down Taeyang's chest. Just 5 more days. Can you wait 5 more days, my love? I've waited 2 years, Taeyang replied, kissing her deeply. What's 5 more days to be free of him? To have you, the money, and control of the organization. We'll rebuild it, make it ours. Make it better. He never appreciated me, Hannah continued, her voice bitter now. Married me because his mother wanted grandchildren, traditional heirs. But he couldn't even do that right. Too busy with his empire to remember he had a wife waiting at home. Min-jun's jaw clenched so hard Petra heard his teeth grind. She knew this part was true. She'd heard the arguments, the long silences, the separate bedrooms. But knowing your marriage was broken and watching your wife celebrate your planned murder were 2 different kinds of pain. Got enough? Min-jun whispered to Young-woo. More than enough. This would hold up in any court, legal or otherwise. Good. Let's go. They filed out silently, back down the servants' stairs, and out into the December night. Min-jun didn't speak until they were in his study, a room in the east wing far from the master bedroom, where he usually worked late into the night going over accounts and strategies. The study was masculine and efficient. Dark wood, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a massive desk that had belonged to his father. This was where Min-jun felt most himself, most in control. And right now, he needed that control because everything else was chaos. He poured himself a whiskey, then paused, looking at the amber liquid with new eyes. Could he ever trust a drink in his own home again? He set it down untasted. Sir, Young-woo began carefully. Your orders. Nothing yet, Min-jun said. We play it smart. Petra said Christmas Eve, which gives us time to plan. I want to know everything. How long has this been going on? Who else knows? Where's the money trail? The doctor she mentioned, find him. The insurance policy, verify it. I want every detail of their plan mapped out before we move. And them? One of the other men jerked his head toward the bedroom wing. They continue exactly as they are. Hannah suspects nothing. Taeyang suspects nothing. Let them think they're clever. Let them think they're winning. Min-jun's smile was cold enough to frost the windows. The best traps are the ones the prey walks into willingly. The men nodded and began to file out, already making calls, setting plans in motion. Young-woo paused at the door. And the girl? He asked, nodding at Petra, who'd been standing quietly by the bookshelf, trying to make herself invisible. Min-jun looked at her, really studied her this time. The girl saved my life. She stays close. I want her protected. After they left, silence fell over the study. Petra shifted uncomfortably, unsure of her place in all this. She was a maid, an outsider, a foreign worker in a country that sometimes made her feel welcome and sometimes made her feel like a curiosity. And now she was tangled in the dangerous world of Korean organized crime. You should sit, Min-jun said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. I'm staff, sir. I shouldn't. Sit. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Petra sat, perching on the edge of the chair like a bird ready for flight. Min-jun poured another whiskey, then paused and looked at her. Do you drink? Not really, sir. Smart. He set the bottle down and moved to a small fridge, pulling out a bottle of water instead. He handed it to her, then took one for himself. Tell me about yourself. And don't call me sir every sentence. My name is Min-jun. I couldn't possibly. You just saved my life and called me out on whether I deserved saving. I think we're past formalities, don't you? Petra couldn't help it. She smiled. It was small and fleeting, but it was there. Okay. Min-jun. His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. I'm from Lagos, she began. Nigeria. I came to Korea 3 years ago to study international business at Seoul National University. I fell in love with the country, the culture, everything. But my student visa was running out, and I needed a work sponsor. Your wife, she paused, the word tasting bitter now. Hannah hired me 6 months ago. The pay was good, the visa sponsorship was legitimate, and I thought it was a blessing. And instead you walked into a conspiracy. Yes. Min-jun studied her, and Petra felt exposed under that gaze. He had a way of looking at people like he could see through all their layers, all their defenses, straight down to the truth of who they were. You could have stayed quiet, he said. Could have kept your head down, collected your pay, and let nature take its course. Why risk yourself for a stranger? Petra thought about it, about all the reasons and justifications she'd told herself over the past 2 weeks. But in the end, it came down to something simple. Because it was wrong, she said quietly. And I couldn't live with myself if I let it happen. My mother always said that silence in the face of evil makes you complicit. And I couldn't be complicit. Not in murder. Something shifted in Min-jun's expression. Not softening exactly, but warming. Like ice beginning to thaw. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She passed away 2 years ago. I'm sorry. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, two people bound together by circumstance and secrets, trying to navigate this strange new reality. What happens now? Petra finally asked. Now, Min-jun said, leaning back in his chair, we plan. We gather evidence. And on Christmas Eve, when my dear wife thinks she's about to become a wealthy widow, we spring the trap. But until then, you need to act completely normal. Can you do that? Petra nodded. I've been doing it for 2 weeks. This is different. Now I'm home. Now you'll see me every day, and you'll have to pretend you don't know what you know. You'll have to serve her dinner, press her clothes, smile and nod while she plans my death. Can you do that? The intensity in his voice sent shivers down her spine. This was the Mafia boss everyone feared, the man who'd built an empire on steel will and calculated moves. Yes, Petra said, meeting his eyes. I can do that. Good. He stood, signaling the end of their conversation. It's late. Get some rest. Tomorrow, everything continues as normal. Petra stood and moved toward the door, but paused with her hand on the handle. Min-jun. Yes. I'm sorry. About your wife. About your cousin. I'm sorry you're going through this. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then, so am I. Listen, if you're loving this story so far, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me what you think Hannah and Taeyong deserve. Should Min-jun show mercy or make them pay? Let me know below. The next 4 days were a masterclass in deception. Petra went about her duties with mechanical precision, serving breakfast, cleaning rooms, running errands, all while knowing that the woman giving her orders was planning cold-blooded murder. It was surreal, like living in 2 realities at once. Min-jun played his part perfectly. He came and went as usual, working late, attending meetings, giving Hannah no reason to suspect anything had changed. But late at night, when the house was quiet and Hannah was asleep in her separate bedroom, he and his team worked. Youngwoo and the others dug up everything. The affair had been going on for 18 months. Taeyong had been embezzling from the organization for just as long, small amounts at first, then larger chunks, all funneled into offshore accounts in his and Hannah's names. The doctor was indeed paid off, along with 2 other members of Min Jun's staff who'd been feeding information to Taeyang. The insurance policy was real. $50 million, with double indemnity for accidental death. The antifreeze was already purchased, hidden in Taeyang's apartment in a locked safe. They'd thought of everything. Except for one thing. They'd underestimated the quiet maid who cleaned their secrets and kept her own counsel. On the morning of Christmas Eve, Petra was arranging flowers in the main hall when Hannah descended the grand staircase, dressed in an elegant cream dress, diamonds at her throat and wrists. She looked like a magazine cover, all polished beauty and grace. Looking at her, you'd never suspect the monster underneath. Petra, Hannah called, her voice carrying that particular tone of command mixed with condescension that Petra had come to hate. The caterers will be here at 4. Make sure the kitchen is spotless. And I need you to stay late tonight, help serve during the party. Of course, ma'am, Petra replied, keeping her eyes downcast, playing the role of the subservient help. Wear the formal uniform, the black one. Tonight needs to be perfect. We're celebrating the holidays, and Min Jun's mother's memory. Family tradition. The casual way she mentioned Min Jun's mother while planning to murder her son made Petra's stomach turn. But she just nodded. Yes, ma'am. Everything will be perfect. Hannah swept past her, trailing expensive perfume and toxic intentions. That afternoon, while Hannah was at the salon getting ready for the evening, Min Jun called Petra to his study. She found him standing by the window, looking out at the snow-covered grounds. He'd been different these past few days. Quieter. More introspective. The weight of betrayal sat heavy on his shoulders, aging him in ways that had nothing to do with time. Tonight, he said without preamble, I need you to do something for me. Anything. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Over the past few days, something had shifted between them. They'd talked late into the night, sharing stories, dreams, pieces of themselves they rarely showed others. She'd learned about the boy who'd been forced into his father's world too young, who'd built walls around his heart so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. And he'd learned about the girl who traveled across the world chasing dreams, who valued honor and truth above comfort. The connection between them was undeniable, crackling like electricity every time they were in the same room. But neither had acknowledged it. How could they, with everything else hanging in the balance? I need you to wear this, Min Jun said, holding up a small device that looked like a button. It's a camera and microphone. Young-woo designed it. You'll be serving drinks tonight, moving through the party. I need you to record everything, especially when Hannah makes her move. Petra took the device, turning it over in her fingers. It was tiny, nearly invisible. Where should I put it? Your uniform has a collar. Pin it there. It'll capture audio and video of everyone you interact with. Okay. She slipped it into her pocket. What about you? Will you drink anything she gives you? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I appreciate the concern, but no. Young-woo will be here, undercover as extra security. He'll switch any drink she hands me. We're not taking chances. Good. They stood there, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Petra knew she should leave, should go prepare for the evening ahead, but her feet wouldn't move. Petra, Min Jun said softly, stepping closer. After tonight, everything changes. You understand that, right? I know. Things might get dangerous. Violent. This world I live in, it's not kind. It's not safe. And I need to know, after tonight, do you want out? I can arrange it. New visa, new job, somewhere far from all this. You'd be protected, provided for. You'd never have to worry about. Do you want me to leave? Petra interrupted, her heart hammering. The question hung between them, loaded with meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. No, Min Jun admitted, his voice rough. No, I don't. But what I want and what's best for you might be two different things. Petra stepped closer, closing the distance between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. She was playing with fire, she knew. This man was dangerous, complicated, wrapped in darkness and violence. But she'd also seen the other side of him. The lonely boy. The dutiful son. The leader who protected his people with fierce loyalty. Maybe I should decide what's best for me, she said quietly. Min Jun's hand came up, his fingers ghosting along her jaw, barely touching but sending shivers through her entire body. Petra. The door to the study burst open. They sprang apart as Youngwoo entered, followed by two other men. Boss, Taeyong just arrived. Early. He's with Hannah now in the east sitting room. The moment shattered. Min Jun's expression shifted, the vulnerability gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a chess master planning his next move. Show me, he commanded. They moved to the bank of monitors hidden behind a false panel in the bookshelf. Over the past few days, Min Jun's team had installed cameras throughout the house. Not in bedrooms or bathrooms, but in common areas, hallways, anywhere the conspirators might talk freely. On the screen, they could see Hannah and Taeyong in the sitting room. They were kissing, desperate and passionate, hands everywhere, completely unaware they were being watched. Tonight, Taeyong said, pulling back. Tonight it all ends. Are you ready? More than ready, Hannah replied, her smile sharp. I've been practicing my grieving widow face. What do you think? She arranged her features into an expression of devastated sorrow that would have been Oscar-worthy if it wasn't so revolting. Taeyong laughed. Perfect. They'll never suspect. And you'll be where? Upstairs, in the study during the toast. I need to be visible but separate, so when it happens, no one can connect me. Then I'll help carry him to the bedroom, play the concerned cousin. By the time the doctor arrives, it'll be too late. Heart attack, just like we planned. Hannah kissed him again. And then we're free. And then we're free, he echoed. Watching it all, Min Jun's expression remained impassive, but Petra saw his hands clench into fists. She wanted to reach out to him, to offer comfort, but not here. Not with his men watching. Youngwoo, Min Jun said quietly. Call Detective Shin. Tell him I'm cashing in that favor he owes me. I want him here tonight, in plain clothes. When this goes down, I want law enforcement as witnesses. This ends legally, not in bloodshed. Are you sure, boss? The old way would be. I'm sure. My father built this organization on violence and fear. Maybe it's time for a different path. His eyes flicked to Petra for just a second. Maybe it's time for something better. The next few hours passed in a blur. The caterers arrived and transformed the mansion into a winter wonderland. White flowers, twinkling lights, ice sculptures, and a Christmas tree that touched the 20-foot ceiling in the main hall. Guests began arriving at 7, members of Min Jun's extended family and trusted associates, all dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate the holidays. Petra changed into her formal uniform, the small camera/microphone device pinned carefully to her collar. She caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her hands were steady, her expression calm. But inside, her heart was racing. Tonight, everything would come to a head. She made her way downstairs and joined the other servers. Hannah was holding court in the main hall, playing the perfect hostess, laughing and greeting guests with warmth that seemed so genuine. How did someone become this good at deception? Min Jun arrived fashionably late to his own party, dressed in a sharp black suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. The room seemed to shift when he entered, everyone gravitating toward him, seeking his attention, his approval. This was his kingdom, and even facing death, he wore his crown with absolute confidence. His eyes found Petra across the room, just for a moment. A silent acknowledgement. Are you ready? She gave the tiniest nod. Ready. Taeyong was there too, playing the loyal cousin, standing at Minjun's side, making jokes, pouring drinks. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Petra moved through the crowd with a tray of champagne, the camera capturing everything. Conversations, faces, the elaborate dance of people playing their roles. At 9 o'clock, Hannah called for attention. The room quieted as she stood beside the massive Christmas tree, elegant and poised. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice carrying perfectly. Christmas has always been a special time for the Kim family. Minjun's mother, may she rest in peace, loved this season. She believed in family, in tradition, in coming together to celebrate what matters most. She gestured for Minjun to join her. He did, climbing the 3 steps to the small platform where the tree stood, accepting a glass of champagne from Hannah's perfectly manicured hand. Petra's pulse skyrocketed. This was it. This was the moment. From her position near the platform, she watched with eagle eyes. Hannah had poured the champagne herself from a bottle she'd opened away from the bartender's station. In her other hand, hidden in the folds of her dress, was a small vial. But before Hannah could make her move, Youngwoo was there, smooth as silk, bumping into her gently. "So sorry, ma'am, excuse me." In the brief chaos of the collision, drinks were switched, positions shifted. When everything settled, Minjun was holding a different glass. The one meant for him was now in Youngwoo's hand. Hannah didn't notice. She was too focused on her performance. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "To tradition. To the year ahead and all it holds." "To family," the room echoed. Minjun raised his glass but didn't drink. Instead, he spoke. "Actually, before we toast, I have something to say." Hannah's smile flickered. "Darling, maybe after." "No. Now." His voice cut through the room like a blade. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You talk about family, Hannah. About tradition. About what my mother believed in. Do you know what she believed in most?" The room had gone deathly silent. "Loyalty," Minjun continued. "She believed that family meant loyalty above all else. That betrayal was the worst sin. That traitors deserved no mercy." Hannah's face had gone pale. "Minjun, what are you? Tell me, wife, what's in this glass you just handed me?" He held it up, the champagne catching the light. "Champagne, obviously. Are you feeling well? Maybe you should sit. Youngwoo, have it tested." Youngwoo pulled out a small device, dipped a test strip into the champagne, and waited. Seconds later, it changed color. Ethylene glycol. Antifreeze. Enough to kill a man in 12 hours, symptoms mimicking a heart attack. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, people backing away from Hannah like she was radioactive. "You're insane," Hannah hissed. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but..." "No games. Just truth." Minjun gestured, and suddenly the wall behind the Christmas tree lit up. A projector screen descended, and video began to play. Hannah and Taeyong in bed. Their conversations planning his murder. The money trails. The doctor's testimony, already recorded after Youngwoo had paid him a very persuasive visit. Every damning detail, displayed for all to see. Hannah's face went from pale to gray. Taeyong tried to run, but 2 of Minjun's men were already there, blocking the exit. "The police are outside," Minjun said calmly. "Detective Shin has been listening to everything. You'll be arrested, tried, and convicted. Both of you. Not by my hand, but by the law. Because unlike you, I'm not a murderer." "Minjun, please," Hannah begged, dropping the act, her true desperation showing. "I can explain. We can work this out. You love me, you. I married you because my mother asked me to, in her last days. She wanted me to have family, to not be alone. I tried to love you, Hannah. God knows I tried. But you can't love someone who's hollow inside. Someone who only sees dollar signs when they look at you. He turned to Taeyang. And you. My cousin. My blood. I trusted you with everything. How much did she pay you? Or was it love? The word dripped with sarcasm. Was she worth betraying 8 years of brotherhood? Taeyang said nothing. There was nothing to say. Detective Shin entered with 4 uniformed officers. Kim Hannah, Park Taeyang, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. As the police read them their rights and led them away in handcuffs, the party guests stood in shocked silence. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. Because in this world, in Min Jun's world, strength and justice were respected above all else. He'd been betrayed, but he'd won. And he'd done it with his head held high. After the police left, after the guests departed with whispered conversations and backward glances, after the caterers cleaned up and the house fell quiet, Min Jun stood alone in his study, staring at nothing. Petra found him there an hour later. She'd changed out of her uniform into simple jeans and a sweater. She knocked softly on the open door. Come in, he said without turning around. She entered, closing the door behind her, and for a long moment, neither spoke. It's done, Min Jun finally said. It's over. Yes. I should feel something. Vindication. Satisfaction. But I just feel empty. Petra moved closer, her heart breaking for him. You lost people you trusted. It's okay to grieve that. She was going to kill me. He said it like he still couldn't quite believe it. My own wife was going to poison me and smile while I died. I know. And Taeyang. My cousin. We grew up together. I trusted him with my life. I know. He finally turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. Why did you save me, Petra? Really? You could have walked away. She stepped closer until there was barely any space between them. Because when I look at you, I don't see a mafia boss or a criminal or whatever label people want to put on you. I see a man who visits his mother's grave every Sunday. Who pays for weddings and hospital bills and tries to be better than the world expects him to be. I see someone worth saving. Petra. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb stroking her cheek. You saved my life. How do I repay that? You don't, she whispered. You just, live. Live the life they tried to take from you. Live it fully and well and without looking back. The kiss happened naturally, inevitably, like gravity pulling them together. His lips met hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him, a softness reserved only for this moment, only for her. Petra melted into him, her hands sliding up his chest to loop around his neck, and for the first time in weeks, the tension bled out of both of them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Min Jun rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said. Not as a maid. Not as staff. Stay with me. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I... Yes, Petra interrupted, smiling. Yes, I'll stay. Because sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes in the form of a brave woman who refuses to stay quiet. And sometimes, in the ashes of betrayal, something beautiful can grow. Before I tell you what happens next, if you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in Min Jun and Petra's story. Show some love by hitting that like button and leaving a comment. Do you think they'll get their happy ending? Or is there more drama to come? Let me know what you think. The trial came 3 months later, in March when Seoul was shaking off winter's grip. It was a media sensation. The beautiful socialite and the charismatic consigliere, accused of plotting to murder one of the city's most powerful men. The evidence was overwhelming. Video, audio, financial records, testimony from the paid-off doctor who turned state's evidence for a reduced sentence. Hannah's lawyers tried everything. They claimed coercion, fraud, insanity. But the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 25 years to life. Taeyong fared no better. In addition to the conspiracy charges, the embezzlement added another 15 years. Both were sent to separate maximum security prisons, their dreams of freedom and fortune crushed under the weight of justice. Through it all, Min-jun attended every day of the trial, Petra at his side. Not hiding, not running, facing his past so he could build a future. And what a future it was. Min-jun began restructuring his organization. The illegal enterprises were phased out, money laundered clean through legitimate businesses. It took time, careful planning, and more than a few difficult conversations with old associates. But Min-jun was nothing if not determined. He wanted to build something his mother would have been proud of. Something clean. Petra went back to university, finishing her degree in international business. Min-jun funded a scholarship in his mother's name for international students, with Petra as one of the first recipients. She graduated with honors and immediately joined Min-jun's company as a partner, bringing fresh perspectives and ethical frameworks to the business. Their relationship blossomed in the public eye. There was criticism, of course. Whispers about the African maid who'd seduced her way into the boss's bed. Racist comments from those who couldn't accept an interracial couple. But Min-jun shut it down hard and fast, making it clear that anyone who disrespected Petra disrespected him. And no one disrespected Min-jun Kim. A year after the trial ended, on Christmas Eve, Min-jun took Petra back to the mansion. It had been remodeled, the painful memories scrubbed away with new paint and new furniture. The bedroom where he discovered the affair was now a library. The sitting room where they'd plotted was now a children's playroom, ready and waiting. He led her to the main hall, where the massive Christmas tree stood just like it had that fateful night. But this time, the air was filled with warmth and love, not betrayal. Petra, Min-jun said, taking her hands in his. A year ago, you saved my life. You didn't have to. You risked everything for a man you barely knew. And in doing so, you gave me the greatest gift I've ever received. Not just my life, but a reason to live it. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant, with a diamond that caught the light from the Christmas tree. I'm not perfect. I have a past that's complicated and dark. But with you, I want to build a future that's bright. Will you marry me? Petra's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time, joy spilling over in a way she couldn't contain. Yes. Yes, Min-jun, I'll marry me. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like promises and hope and forever. They were married 3 months later in a beautiful ceremony that blended Korean and Nigerian traditions. Petra's family flew in from Lagos, initially skeptical of this Korean man who'd swept their daughter into his world, but Min-jun won them over with his sincerity and his obvious devotion. The wedding was a celebration not just of their love, but of survival. Of two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. Young-woo was Min-jun's best man, standing proud as his boss, his friend, exchanged vows. Petra's best friend from university, a Korean woman named Soo-jin who'd been her first friend in Seoul, stood as maid of honor. As Min-jun and Petra shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying to a song that mixed K-pop beats with Afrobeats rhythms, Young-woo leaned over to Soo-jin. You know, a year ago, if someone had told me that boss would be here, married to a Nigerian woman he met because she saved him from murder, I would have called them crazy. Soo-jin smiled. The best love stories are the ones you never see coming. Amen to that. 18 months after the wedding, on a warm summer evening, Petra went into labor. Min-jun, the man who'd faced down rival gangs without flinching, nearly passed out in the delivery room. But when he held his daughter for the first time, a tiny perfect blend of him and Petra with wise eyes and a strong grip, he wept. They named her Grace Minji Kim. Grace for the undeserved favor that had saved Minjun's life. Minji for Minjun's mother, who'd always believed in family and loyalty. As Minjun sat in the hospital room, Petra sleeping peacefully, their daughter in his arms, he thought about how close he'd come to losing it all. How 2 whispered words, "Be quiet," had changed the trajectory of his entire life. He thought about Hannah, rotting in prison, and Taeyang, whose greed had cost him everything. He felt pity for them now, not anger. They'd chosen their path, and he'd chosen his. And his path had led him here. To love. To redemption. To a future he'd never imagined possible. Grace made a small sound, and Minjun looked down at her, this tiny miracle who represented everything good in his life. "I'm going to be better for you," he whispered. "I'm going to build a world where you're safe, where you're loved, where you never have to be afraid. I promise." And Minjun Kim always kept his promises. 5 years later, the Kim family had grown in more ways than one. Grace had a younger brother, David Junho, a rambunctious 3-year-old who kept everyone on their toes. The company had expanded internationally, with Petra leading the African market expansion, building partnerships in Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa. Minjun had fully legitimized his business empire. He now sat on boards of charities, funded schools, and worked with law enforcement to help reform former gang members. The transformation was complete. He was no longer the feared Mafia boss. He was a businessman, a philanthropist, a husband, and a father. But he never forgot where he came from. And he never forgot the woman who'd saved him. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Minjun took Petra back to where it all began. The garden where she'd first pulled him into the shadows and whispered, "Be quiet." "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, holding her hand as they stood in the spot where their lives had intersected. "Saving me? Getting involved in all of this?" Petra looked up at him, at this man who'd given her everything, who loved her fiercely and completely, who'd rebuilt his entire life to be worthy of her faith in him. "Not for a single second," she said. "You were worth saving, Minjun. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, a kiss that held 5 years of memories and a lifetime of promises yet to be fulfilled. From the house, they could hear their children's laughter, Grace chasing David through the halls, their nanny calling after them to be careful. It was chaotic and beautiful and perfect. "Come on," Petra said, tugging his hand. "Let's go home." And they did. Together. Always together. Because the greatest revenge against those who tried to destroy you is to live. Not just survive, but truly live. To love hard, to build something beautiful, to find joy in the ordinary moments and treasure in the everyday blessings. Hannah had wanted to take everything from Minjun. Instead, her betrayal had led him to everything he'd ever truly needed. A partner who saw him, not his money or his power. A family built on love, not obligation. A life with meaning and purpose. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways. We just have to be brave enough to walk through them. Minjun had walked through his, guided by a woman who refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. And on the other side, he'd found everything worth living for. As the Kim family gathered around the dinner table that night, Grace chattering about her day at school, David making a mess with his food, Petra laughing at something Youngwoo said, he'd become Uncle Youngwoo, a regular fixture at family dinners, Minjun felt a peace he'd never known existed. This was home. This was love. This was what it meant to truly live. And it all started with 2 words whispered in the darkness, "Be quiet." If you've stayed with us until the end of this incredible journey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is what the Afro-Korean channel is all about, stories of love that transcend boundaries, of courage in the face of evil, of redemption and second chances. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear a story of hope today. Drop a comment and let me know what your favorite part was. Was it the betrayal? The revenge? The love story? I want to hear from you. And remember, beautiful souls, sometimes the greatest love stories start in the darkest places. Stay blessed, stay loved, and I'll see you in the next one. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you and yours.